house up there. We've bought a house here, and we plan to be here a significant portion of the year, but we're not sure of the exact dates. I started writing again about 2 years ago, after 30 years of being away from it, except for technical writing, which I did professionally for about 20 years. So I'm 2 years into it. I'm not going to read the one that I thought I was going to read. I'm going to read something I wrote yesterday. So it may still be in draft form, I'm not sure. There. Okay. It's called Bat. On the way home, David sat quietly looking at his lap. It was hot and I was tired, so I didn't ask him why he wasn't his usual talkative self. By the time we got home, I had to call my boss about my work schedule, head back out again for ketchup I thought we already had when I went to the store the first time, pack ground beef into burgers, throw a load of laundry into the washer, and fix dinner. I didn't notice until I called him to dinner that my son still seemed glum. I questioned him. "Don't know," he said. Then, "Nothing." Finally, "I'm done." And then he would say no more. David was not done. Well, he didn't speak and make sense until he was 4, but that was probably because I understood him even when he didn't speak at all, and because there were people around that even I didn't want to speak to. In any case, by the time he was 2 years old, my son could build a Lincoln log cabin identical to one being built on the other side of the table, adding a log to the right front corner of his each time I added a log to the left-back corner of mine. And by the time he was 4, he could tell if the clerk at the 7-Eleven was giving him correct change for 2 ice cream bars. So, no, not done. This is a broken computer, so it's going to take me a bit of time to change pages. It really is going to take me some time. Okay. After dinner, we went outside and sat on the steps. I put my arm around him, and little by little, the story came out. His class had started to learn the sounds of letters and how to put those sounds together to make words. The other kids were doing well. David was so frustrated at not getting it that he was blowing up in class and being hauled off to the principal's office. He did know his ABCs, having learned the Now I Know song in nursery school, and he could already recognize written letters from the previous year in kindergarten, but his method for learning was unusual. He didn't memorize A looks like this and B looks like that. His teacher told me he made up elaborate stories about each letter. One letter, for example, was like a man standing on a diving board about to dive into the water. Which letter? Not only can I not remember, I can't even draw a stick figure on top of a diving board line with a wavy line underneath and relate the result to any letter, uppercase or lowercase. Well, his stories made sense to me. He also had considerable difficulty in kindergarten distinguishing between the letter B and the letter D. Sitting on the steps the previous year, we had resolved that problem by identifying his right hand as the right, rather than wrong, one to use to do important stuff, like wielding a fork or throwing a ball. That left his left hand for school. That decided if he used his left hand with the palm facing inward, fingers straight, and moved it across the page from left to right until it was just to the left of a B or a D, it would be the first of these letters in the alphabet. A B if it fit next to his palm. A D with its round part on the left would not fit. Seem overly complex? Sure is, if you can tell the difference between the two letters without making up stories. David said teacher had given everybody their own word to learn. He didn't know what his was. From his pocket, he pulled out a mangled sheet of paper with one word he had copied on it. B. I could see the marks made by his eraser, where he had drawn the curve on the wrong side, then the right side. A. For some reason that a specialist in dyslexia might be able to explain, he never had trouble with A. T. No problem there. T is an entirely symmetrical letter. Thank goodness the last letter wasn't D. That would have been bad. I reminded him about the sound of B. I think he knew it, but had gotten so discouraged that it seemed easier to claim otherwise. We practiced B, 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 until he giggled. Then we tackled the three sounds for A. Long A, short ah, and ah. No problem, either with A or in a minute with T. I left the rest up to him. Gripping his knees with both hands, he said, ba, a, t. Each sound separate. Dutifully, ba, a, t, without comprehension. So I stood up and swung an imaginary baseball bat. He stood up and imitated the action, swinging his arms and puzzling out ba, a, t, ba, a, t. Suddenly, bat, he yelled at the top of his lungs, swinging mightily. Bat! He ran into the house, still yelling, came out with his small baseball bat and leapt all around the yard, hitting an imaginary ball and laughing in triumph. Then another bulb lit up. Batman! He put his two palms above his temples like on Batman's headgear, and then took an imaginary cape in his hands and an imaginary flight over our apartment building. After landing, he whispered, Bat! Scrunched down to make himself small and scrunched up his nose in a comic book imitation of that creepy creature who eats mosquitoes and pollinates our crops. I clapped and clapped and clapped. That was when I understood my son had a second learning difficulty, one which would never have become obvious in a master-apprentice environment, but which was a serious problem in a modern classroom where kids are required to sit still, eyes front, and listen to the teacher. David could not learn by hearing or even by seeing. He had to do stuff to learn stuff. The next evening after dinner, it took my son less than a minute to hit the ball with the bat, to run out of the yard and come back, and to rock a never-to-be-born baby brother in his arms. Now I'm smart, he said.
Comments?
I'm looking for criticisms.
Come on. Somebody must have some points to make.
It was a beautiful, touching story. I and maybe it's because you're so soft-spoken. I had trouble getting into it at the beginning. And I think it took a little while for me to understand where the story was going and what it was